as people digitally file in, I can at least start the intro. So welcome everyone. Thank you for logging on for this evening's program. My name is Matt Schumann. I am a programming librarian here at Cary. Before we begin, just a few things to note. If you have any technical issues, please message me in the chat and I can try to help. If you have any questions for our speakers tonight, please submit them via the Q&A button and we will address them at the end. And I'd also like to thank the generous donors to the Cary Library Foundation for helping sponsor this evening's program. And this program is made possible in partnership with the Association of Black Citizens of Lexington, or ABCL, as well as a number of Massachusetts libraries, including the Tewksbury Public Library, Lincoln Public Library, Lucius B. Memorial Library, Morse Institute Library, Belmont Public Library, Ashland Public Library, and Marlborough Public Library. Thank you for helping promote and sponsor this program. So with us this evening is Nicole A. Taylor. She is a James Beard Award-nominated food writer, master home cook, and producer. She has written for the New York Times, Bon Appetit, and Food and Wine. Nicole is the author of the Up South Cookbook and the Last OG Cookbook. She is the executive producer of If We So Choose, a short documentary about the desegregation of an iconic Southern fast food joint. And she's also the co-founder of the Maroon, a marketplace and retreat house focused on radical rest for Black creatives. She lives in New York City and Athens, Georgia, with her husband and son. And she'll be in conversation tonight with Kelly Suber. Kelly is an educator and a member of the Association of Black Citizens of Lexington. So now I'll turn it over and please welcome Kelly and Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Matt. Well, welcome, Nicole, and thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to talk to you about your book, Watermelons and Redbirds. And we're going to get into it, but first, since it's a celebration of Juneteenth and Black celebrations, if we could maybe start with just a little background for our audience on Juneteenth and what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah. June 19th, 1865 in Galveston, Texas, General Granger arrived on the island of Galveston. It's actually an island off of in Texas. And at that moment, he read General Order Number 3, and that read more than 200,000 enslaved Black Texans were free. But what I do know and what I've learned throughout this research, it wasn't to the following year, 1866, that newly freed Black people in Texas started really celebrating Juneteenth. And as we know, more than 2 years ago, actually, maybe almost to the date, it was a week before Juneteenth 2021 that President Biden made Juneteenth a newly recognized federal holiday.
Yes.
It has been a recognized holiday in Texas for almost 3 decades now, but now it's a nationally recognized holiday, and it's the first holiday in a very long time, I think since Martin Luther King holiday, that we all Americans have a new nationally recognized holiday. So that is Juneteenth. And, it's important to say that, that holiday started as a very Texas thing, but people all over the country celebrate Juneteenth. And, due to the Great Migration is when, hundreds and thousands of Blacks like Texas and Georgia and the Carolinas, and went to cities like New York and Boston, and even on the West Coast to LA. Texans took that Juneteenth celebration with them. So in places like Milwaukee and Oakland and LA, there have been public Juneteenth parades and festivals for some of them for like 50 years. So yeah, Juneteenth has always been around. It's no longer a niche holiday. It is an American holiday. And here we are 2 years later, and people are very excited about the holiday. And interested to learn more, particularly around the foods.
Absolutely, absolutely. I first learned of Juneteenth when I was in high school, and and I lived in Texas for a few years, and very much I would say it was a Texas-centric holiday when I was there, when I first learned about it. But it definitely has spread throughout the country. And now, of course, it's a national holiday in so many states, state holiday, I think in almost every state, which is fabulous and really an opportunity to reflect on, resilience and family traditions, all of that. And I love the way that this book ties into that, and Black celebrations in general. So let's get right into it. Well, first of all, tell me about the title. Can you tell me
Yeah,
about the title?
watermelon and redbirds. You asked me the question of what made me write the book, and I didn't
Hmm.
answer that. So I discovered Juneteenth in 2011 in Brooklyn, of all places. I did not
Okay.
grow up celebrating Juneteenth, but I do know now that the family reunions and the church picnics and the HBCU graduations definitely had elements of Juneteenth: food, dance, music, family, and remembrance. But 2011, I was in Killian Gore Park, which is a park in Fort Greene, and they were having a Juneteenth festival. And it was from that moment on, I personally started celebrating Juneteenth. And then I started writing about Juneteenth. And when I was writing about Juneteenth for the New York Times back in 2017, it was such a niche holiday.
Hmm.
And I remember my literary agent sent me an email and said, you should do a Juneteenth cookbook. And I deleted the email because I was like, this is such a niche holiday. I don't want to try to sell a book about a holiday that's so obscure, like people don't know about it. And for years, she kept pushing me to write a Juneteenth cookbook. So I actually started writing the proposal for the cookbook prior to the COVID-19 pandemic
Okay.
lockdown.
Okay.
I got laid off my job in the middle of the pandemic. And then I was just like, I need something to focus on. Let me finish this book.
Hmm.
And what happened was, at the same time that I was finishing the proposal, writing another piece about Juneteenth foodways and Black restaurants for the New York Times, the George Floyd uprisings
Mm.
happened. And that moment, I knew for certain, if I had any doubt in my mind, and I did have
Mhm.
doubts, I didn't think I was the right person to write a Juneteenth cookbook. But that was kind of the turning point that I knew I wanted to create something really beautiful and joyful in the world.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and so prior to finishing that summer of 2020, it was a cold winter. I was on the train. I'm like, I need names. I need names. What could this cookbook be? My
Mhm.
Juneteenth, the Juneteenth cookbook. I'm like, no. Literally, I had not thought about red birds and the story that my mom used to tell me about red birds, and I don't know how long. And that story is that if you see a red bird outside, to blow the red bird a kiss. It's good luck. It's a symbol of good luck, but more importantly, it's an ancestor. It's someone from your family that's coming back to say hello. They're watching over
Okay.
you. And I remembered that story as a kid,
Mhm.
and I was like, I need to put that in the title. And I chose the word watermelon because it's just a classic, all American summertime fruit that's communal.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's it, watermelon and redbirds. A lot of people thought it was too poetic and that it sounded like a novel, not a cookbook. They wanted
Mhm.
something very straightforward, but I was like, no, I knew for certain that this would be the title of the book. And I
Okay.
saw someone say a lot of people now, when I talk about the title of the book, they email me or they text me or they raise their hand at the end of a conversation like this and they say, yeah,
Mhm.
I grew up with the same thing. It's not just a, some people say that story or folklore
Mhm.
came from indigenous people. I believe that, but it's so many different cultures and so many different people know the redbird story
Yeah.
now. It's just a beautiful thing to remember people in the past and the present, and
Mhm.
also it's a great symbol for the pointing towards the future.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I first saw this, when I was reading through it, when you were saying that, you wanted to put together recipes that bring joy. And as I was reading through this, it really was taking me back to a lot of celebrations and just memories that I hadn't thought about, but just
Mm.
seeing the recipe, or one of the things I love about your recipes is each one has a little intro. And it's like it's a combination of a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a taste of your experience, and the recipe itself, how it all ties together. And I got that, just jumping in as you were talking, made me think about the recipe that you had for honey ice cream, when you were talking about making ice cream and having the ice cream maker. I had an experience, a neighbor, we'd have a cookout. He had that crank ice cream maker going,
Ah,
and we'd all take a turn on it. No one wanted to wait, but the taste of that ice cream when it came out was, I can still taste it now. And one of the things I really like about your book is that all your recipes take those classic recipes and give it a little twist, a little flair, a little whatever you want to call it. Um, Tell me about that. What were your inspirations, or how did you decide as you were going through how you wanted to change it up and still be true to Black celebrations and Juneteenth?
well, first of all, second to the Redbird
Mhm.
comment or question, people saying they've heard that before. The story about making ice cream is the second thing that people always bring up, saying that I jogged that memory for them. And that to me is so humbling to hear people as soon as I read that chapter, you talking about the
Yep.
ice cream maker routine, it took me right back to a childhood moment. So thank you for
Yeah,
that. So
absolutely.
yes, in this book, in this book, I was very intentional about taking the Black, what I call long table, or the African American dining table or dinner table, the what I call celebration foods that you always see there, and flipping them on their heads. For instance,
Mhm.
sweet potato pie, you're going to see it Thanksgiving time or Christmas, or the warm or almost warm months. And collard greens are always a staple. Red velvet cake. I basically looked at all of the foods that make up the Black American experience, and I put them in a chart, literally. Um, and I started to
Yes.
conceptualize what I wanted to do with the recipes. For instance, in the red drink chapter, I have a sweet potato spritz. So instead of having a sweet potato pie in this book, I take the spices that are typically used in sweet potato and take the actual sweet potato and make a sweet potato syrup and turn that into a spritz. It's riffing off of the Aperol spritz, which is very popular
Mhm.
now in America. It's been around in Italy forever. I take Cappelletti, which is an aperitivo, put that in there with the sweet potato spritz and a little sparkling wine, and you have a drink.
Mm.
Reminds you a bit of a sweet potato pie, but then you're like, wait, no, it's not that sweet. This is something,
Mhm.
it's different. And then for collard greens, for instance, I like to remind people, like, nobody is eating, very few people are eating like heavy collard greens at a picnic in the summertime.
Mhm.
That's just not the way that any Americans traditionally eat, and very specifically Black Americans ate it. So I took a pesto and created this plum called green pesto salad. So you have beautiful plums.
Ooh.
You use nectarines in this recipe. It's in the salads chapter. I use an ancient grain called fonio, but you can use rice or um, any other hearty grain to make this beautiful salad. Yes, you can have your potato salad, but you
Mhm.
also can try this salad as well.
Wow. Wow. Well, when I think of going to cookouts and celebrations, when I picture the table, like you said, there's a potato salad, and we'll get to that. And that can be a whole discussion in itself.
Yes.
But also, I remember my grandmother's sister had a big garden, and she'd always have a bean salad. And then, of course, you had your collards and things. And so I really like that there's that variety in here. One of the things that really struck me in this book is that there were recipes that could be vegetarian or vegan. There were some of them, like the one where you were talking about ribs, it said, well, you could do this with different meats. It could be beef, it could be pork, it could be whatever you choose. And I really like that there is the ability to switch it up while still maintaining, with the flavors. Now, let me just say, when you were speaking of the chapter with red drinks, one of the things I was thinking about when I was reading about the strawberry lemonade, it really made me think, and this to me is the beauty of this book. For me, I had so many memories just coming at me. And one of the things I had was when we would get together at my grandmother's house, and if she was making something, and she would have it in the punch bowl. And with the punch bowl, you knew it was good, and it was always, and I just remember it was like a whole process when the punch bowl got low, and someone had to go and fill it and bring it back. But it was usually something red. And at this time, my grandmother's from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So these were just our family celebrations, moments to get together. And when I saw that about the lemonade, because she would usually be some kind of red drink, usually lemonade, sometimes things in it. And that's the only time I remember as a child using that punch bowl. I'm sure she used it for many other occasions. But I'm telling you, the things were just coming at me as I was reading this cookbook from my memories. But
Listen, the punch bowl is.
Say that again. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. The punch bowl is what?
That same time. The punch bowl is a symbolic thing of family. It typically reminds you of one person. There's always one person in the family that had the fancy punch bowl.
Yes.
And and not only that was that one person who manned the punch bowl, like it was a thing gathering around the punch bowl to get the drink. So not
and
only
don't mess it up.
Exactly. So, that in the red drinks chapter, I guess I should talk a little bit, and you said it before, like each chapter opens with the essay, and each recipe has what we call in the cookbook world, a head note. And so it was really important, and I was very intentional. That's going to be the word of the night, in making sure that when I talked about punch bowls, and I actually have a punch bowl cake too in the back of the chapter, but when I talked about it, I wanted to help you think about who is a person in your family who had the beautiful punch bowl, and how the punch bowl was always the center of attention, and how it wasn't just a Juneteenth thing. Matter of fact, you probably did not see the punch bowl at Juneteenth. You saw it more at Black celebrations. So I was very intentional about going back in my memory bank, but also talking to my elders, talking to other people in my family about their Juneteenth celebrations, about their general celebrations, like what was on the table. Like a lot of families have china, Black families have china and dishes that get passed around, and someone always has the bowl for the potato salad. So in this cookbook, it is a cookbook. I want people to cook from it, but I also recognize that so many people actually are reading the book and reading the essays and the head notes, and they're able to get inspired to cook, and also get inspired to have conversations about their own family traditions.
Absolutely. In fact, there was one section, Carpe Diem, or I think that's it. But anyway, where you said that about that food or family is the connective tissue with family, and to really reach out and understand and ask those questions to make sure your family and understand your family. I'm just paraphrasing that, but that really spoke to me, because one of the things I do on the side that I enjoy doing is I'm my family's genealogist, and the
Ah,
recipes, the style, the how you make this, why you make this, what's the history of making this, who taught you how to make this. Those are all those types of
mhm.
questions that with my grams and my, people who are no longer here, I wish I had asked more of those. So I
Same.
agree. I
I,
fully agree. Yeah.
I'm there, same. And listen, speaking of genealogy and history and family, um, and ancestors, one of the things that really kept me going in writing this book is going deep down research rabbit holes at public libraries.
Mm,
Uh, I have a chapter called Fairs and Festivals, where it's
mhm.
all what I call Americana fair food. I have like a funnel cake. In the chapter, I have a corn dog, but I also have a zucchini corn dog and
Yeah.
a corn dog. That's me, turning things on their heads. But that chapter is super fun. But in the beginning, I talk about some very deep history, and that is about the Texas State Fair, which is one of the
Mm,
largest state fairs in the country. I talk about it being desegregated. It wasn't desegregated until the 60s, and that fair has been around since before the early 1900s. Um, and what you see throughout my book is I say people's names.
mhm.
So you see the names of civil rights activists, my family members, my friends, people in Texas who fought tirelessly for Juneteenth to be a state holiday in
Yeah.
Texas. So it's super important for me to say those people's names because I think it reinforces to all people about being connected to their family, their friends, and their communities. And that was intentional as well.
Yeah. 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 Um, it's funny you say that about all the people who work to make this a holiday, because sometimes I talk to people and they say, it seemed like it was like Juneteenth, boom, here was this federal holiday. When the reality of it is this is a celebration that had been around, as you said, since, well, I guess the annual celebration starting in 1866, and so many people working to bring this into the consciousness of the country.
Yeah.
And here we are. Um, let me, I just one thing that popped in my head, and I just want to ask, before it pops back out, is when you were putting together these chapters and with the essays at the front, or the blurb at the beginning of each recipe, where did you find your inspiration for that?
Mhm.
Or I know you research memories. How did what was your process to bring this all
Mm.
together? Because I can tell it's a labor of love.
Yeah,
And
that's a very good question.
Mhm.
It was a labor of love. I mean, writing a cookbook is twofold. A lot of cookbook authors um, are very focused on recipe development, making sure those things are right. And I'm definitely one of those, right? Um, but I'm also a writer. And in a lot of cookbooks, if you go into your local library and you pick out cookbooks, you don't see as many essays or you don't see as many meaty or beefy head notes.
Mhm.
And I knew I had a lot to say and I had a lot of things that I wanted people to know, but I also needed to balance it, right? I wanted to, what I call, put some breadcrumbs out there for folks. So they see a
Mhm.
name like Mr. Al Juneteenth Edwards, who was a state legislator in Galveston. There is a statue, um, and it has Mr. Juneteenth. He was a huge
Mm.
advocate of making Juneteenth a state holiday in the late 70s in Texas. Before we heard Miss Opal Lee's name, he was like the it person. So I knew in my mind that I had to weave him in this book. I didn't know where he was going to go and
Mhm.
how he was
Mhm.
going to fit in this book, but I knew he had to be in the book. I also, all of my friends and colleagues knew that I was working on this book, and I had a very short time to work on this book. Most people work on a project like this 2 or 3 years. I had like maybe 16 months. And one of my dear friends from Atlanta said, "Oh, you need to talk to my friend. She's born and raised in Galveston, but she lives in Atlanta now." And I got on the phone and I talked to her. She starts off the Juneteenth. She starts off the red drink chapter. I'm gonna just read a little bit from that, just a little.
Yeah.
The Afro egg cream. Did I pass it? Let's see here. I just want to read just a little bit and then I'm gonna tell you the story about Afro egg cream. Marguerite Hannah, 61, born and raised in Galveston, Texas. Marguerite's voice lit up as she talked about her Juneteenth foods: brisket, hot links, stuffed shrimp, potato salad, and lemon pie. One of the most memorable moments in our phone conversation was Marguerite waxing poetic about her childhood throwbacks of red cream soda. Later, as I read more about Black Galveston and made a pilgrimage to Galveston Island, I connected the dots that Marguerite is the granddaughter of Thomas Debo T.D. Armstrong, one of the most prominent businessmen in Galveston, who once graced the list of the 100 richest African Americans in the US. The Fountain Luncheonette at Armstrong Drugstore was a popular community gathering. Marguerite's mother worked there as a soda jerk and served a lot of things, including hot dogs, fries, ice cream, malts, and the most talked about menu item, the cherry cola. There was another drink popular at drugstores of the day, the egg cream. That drink, which contained no egg, was a combination of chocolate syrup, milk, and soda water. This Afro egg cream, or French soda, modernizes the classic by combining it with the flavors of red drink. I closed my eyes and imagined sitting at the booth near Mr. Armstrong's outside marquee sign, letting the sunlight hit my face as I enjoy my red drink. So Marguerite's story, oh my gosh. I had the best conversation. Like, we talked for 2 hours. She didn't tell me anything about her family's history in Galveston until I went there and I started reading all these books about Black Galveston. And I'm like, well, hold up. Wait, this is her grandfather? He's like the king of great grandfather, her whole family, like the king of Galveston. And I came back and I texted her and I'm like, hold up, you didn't tell me this? She then told me about her mom was the soda jerk there. But I couldn't put her whole story. She needed like 5 pages. But I got that story and then I already had the Afro egg cream. And when she told me about her mother being a soda jerk, which is essentially, she works there as, a counter girl, right? I was like, this is a story here. I gotta take Marguerite's story, family story, and put it with the Afro egg cream. So that's kind of how, it's almost like an artist. I think my brain works a little different from most cookbook authors because they're just thinking about the recipe and what to tell a person in terms of cooking it. Like, make sure it's brown, it's crispy, and I do those things, but I'm also trying to tell a story. I'm trying to connect the dots.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of non-linear how I wrote my book, crazily. And if you get bogged down, at least I got bogged down because the writing gets long. I get going deep dives with research, and then I have like 5 recipes to test, and I'm like 2 weeks behind.
Yeah, but you know what? But for me, the stories are really what was tying it together for me. And one of the things that I'm reading and I'm like, I'm finding a recipe I want to try. I'm finding like flavor pairings that, I might not have thought of, but also getting that bit of, wow, that's some history I didn't know. For instance, with the tea cakes, right? When your chapter where you talk about tea cakes, And at first I was like, okay, I think I know what a tea cake is. And then as I was reading it and reading the recipe, I said, oh yeah, this is something that my grandmother's sister used to make.
Ah,
But um, but then to talk, that intersection, like you said, of the enslaved cook and African American history and how tea cakes fit into that. And I could probably ask my own kids now, and they'd be like, "What's a tea cake?" And that's a piece of history that I think is that we need to keep in the forefront, because as I was reading that, I said, you know what? I remember going over to Aunt Helen's house, and Auntie would have these tea cakes and pull them out. And reading the recipe and the flavors in them, I'm like, oh, this, it's like I could taste it's like a little spice cookie, spice cake, whatever you want to call it. And that's really what it made me think of. So I love the way that it all ties together. And I think it did it, so well with so many of the different foods that you have in there. Like I said, when I was reading it, I was thinking, one of the things that really struck me is there were a lot of flavors that you were pulling into recipes that come from other cultural traditions. Like I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce it, but the harissa, chimichurri, the fish sauce, all in different ways.
sumac, the
Sumac, yep. And talk about that, if you would tell me, because that really struck me. I said, I've never tried these combinations, but I want to see where they're going with that. So how did
Yeah,
you
I
how did
mean,
you come up with that?
I on purpose
Hmm.
basically knew that I wanted to also tell the story of allies, right? I wanted
Yes.
to tell the story of Texas, right? Centering that story of Texas. And you can't talk about Texas and not talk about Mexican culture. And
Absolutely.
and so when you think about corn, I'm thinking about indigenous people. I'm thinking about people who are in South Texas, who built South Texas, who were our allies, right?
Hmm.
And so you see me riffing off the Frito pie, which is a Texas
Yep.
thing. It doesn't really
Very much so.
relate back to you know, Mexican culture, but I have Fanny Gearson, who is a Mexican born chef. I mention her in the ice cream chapter.
Mhm.
But I don't say this is a Mexican born chef. It's again leaving a breadcrumb, and you're gonna go Google Fanny Gearson, pastry chef with 3 or 4 books, Mexican sweets, Mexican bread, Mexican ice cream. That's her specialty. And I use a lot of sumac. I grew up in the American South in Athens, which is in Northeast Georgia, and you can forage for sumac at the right time, and
Mhm.
that is a red, kind of flowering plant that was used for makeup, but in indigenous households, it's a staple ingredient. You also find sumac in North African and Eastern food. So on purpose, I just wanted to kind of say to allies, I see you, thank you, right? You
Mhm.
also see in the front of the book, I have a section uh, of Black, Indigenous, and POC
Yes.
owned condiments. So I know
Mhm.
everybody's not going to want to make their lemon pepper chicken, my lemon pepper seasoning. You're not going to have time. So I give you a list of a place, Uncle Nitty's, which actually I found out today they're going out of business. It's a Black-owned seasoning company that to me has some of the best salt-free lemon pepper seasoning. So I put them in the book, and I put, my favorite hot sauce companies. I put
Mhm.
um, all of my friends and colleagues who understand freedom, equality, understand that it is important. It was important to Black Americans, and that it can't just be a Black people's thing trying to get to freedom.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I have them in the book because they're my allies, and
Mhm.
we need people to help us to,
Makes
to
sense.
push to push things forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, in that chapter you were talking about the pantry and gadgets and staples that you can have on hand. I love that. But it just reminds me, can you talk about the what was it? Your Juneteenth food pyramid and
Ah,
what's in there and how how you built that, what it is.
yeah, I'm gonna go with a backstory about the Juneteenth food pyramid. So this
Mhm.
time last year, I had the honor and privilege to be on stage with the head executive director of the Black Smithsonian, Kevin Young. We did a talk when my book came out, and it was the highlight really of last year of the book coming out. Everyone else was excited
Okay.
about me being on the Today Show, but I'm like, I'm getting to talk with Kevin Young at the Black Smithsonian, and he asked me the exact question you just asked me about the food pyramid, and he was like, it reminds me of W.E.B. Du Bois's. He has this book that just came out with all these graphs. That he created during the Paris exposition, where he really created charts and graphs about Black life in America. And it was about Black life in America in Georgia. And so he would have these pyramids, and it would have like owns land, sharecropper, and it would be a red block, a blue block, and a green block. And then he would have the pyramids saying, school teacher, schoolhouse. He would talk about education. So I created this a pyramid, not really knowing or not even really seeing this W.E.B. Du Bois work. My husband actually had the book, but I never opened the book. And Kevin Young said, your food pyramid that has all of the foods of Juneteenth remind me so much of W.E.B. Du Bois's charts. And I was like, yeah, I made that connection. And I would say, I started off saying I wanted to give people this simple graph.
Okay.
I'm definitely not a E.B. Du Bois, but a graph of foods, fruits, and vegetables to buy when you're at the farmer's market or your local grocery store, that are bountiful in the summertime, that are bountiful around Juneteenth, and that coincide with the recipes in my book. So it literally came about like, I want to create this guide. People can put it in their pocket. They can write their grocery list on the back, and the pyramid is on the front, but not realizing that it was, again, connected to one of the most important scholars of our time. That was coincidence. That was not intentional.
Wow.
And I would have to thank my designer, George McCallman. He's a designer and an artist who has a book called Illustrated Black History, for executing it. He didn't know it either.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like what you were saying when you got back to it, and you said again, about the intentionality, that it was intentional to, have this list to, to use as a jumping off point. But that's amazing that, that connection there, that, that wasn't intentional, but is there. So cool. Let me think. Oh, I want to ask you about your potato salad.
Okay.
Now,
so I gotta ask you first. Do you
okay.
make potato salad at your? Are you the person that makes a potato salad in your family? Who's the person in your family?
Oh, my mother used to be the person that made the potato salad, but she has passed on, and so I want to say I have picked up her mantle, but we'll see. It's been with COVID, it's been a while since we've all gathered together since she passed, but I learned how to make my potato salad from her. And it's funny because people have, they'll say, who made this, what's in this, who does this. I think of myself as a potato salad. I go with what I know. I don't put raisins in it.
Do you use eggs?
I do use eggs. I do use eggs.
I don't do a lot of things in my potatoes. I made this potato salad, as you see, the title is called Southern-ish potato salad, because I wanted to riff off the classic, but still keep all of the flavor profiles and mix it up. But I would say every recipe, when I had a woman in Oakland, she was like, we gotta talk about your potato salad. She was like, I'm gonna give it a try, but I don't know. And everyone says that I'm gonna give it a try, but I don't know. But it's really good. I mean, I use banana peppers and the brine of banana peppers. You can buy the banana peppers, or I have a recipe in the very beginning about how to quick pickle your own banana peppers. So instead of using relish, I have
Mm-hmm.
banana peppers. I use sour cream. Most people use mayo, Dukes,
Yep.
if you're in the South. I'm in Northeast. I don't know what your mom used or what you use.
Yeah, she was a mayo. She was a mayo person, even though she's funny because she would use mayo, but she would always use the minimum because she really wasn't a big mayo fan. Go figure.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not a big mayo fan either. So that's why that's the thing. And I don't use an egg. A lot of people put an egg in their potato salad.
Mhm.
But I will say here's the thing. Here's a key to Southern-ish potato salad or black, potato salad. And I know people are trying to figure it out. It's about a few things. Attention to detail.
Mhm.
It's about being appointed. I talk about that in the essay.
Mhm.
Someone has to crown you as the potato salad queen, right?
Mhm.
You can't just come, you can't be a 20-something year old, just graduated from college,
Mhm.
trying to make potato salad. Nobody's going to take you serious with that potato salad. There is a history, a ritual, a patience, a maturity,
Mhm.
a cleanliness that's tied to the potato salad making. And there isn't a recipe. I mean, even though I have a recipe, everyone knows when you're making potato salad, it's tasting as you
Mhm.
go.
Yeah.
You need to put the food on the back. You have to taste as you go. And I try to convey what I just said in the recipe and the head note. I convey the kind of you need to be crowned, but the actual recipe, I can't say it enough. I said taste, taste, adjust, taste, taste. But tasting also means you've had to have had a good potato salad.
Mhm.
So that's a tricky one, the potato.
Yeah. 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 Well, what you just said about it's the process, it's you can't just jump right into it. It reminded me of something that you have a recipe in the book for coleslaw, like green coleslaw. And it reminded me of when I was growing up, my grandmother lived with us, my father's mother. And my mom used to make the coleslaw, and then my grandmother started taking over. My mother was trying to tell her, you can use this food processor and it's going to go so much faster. And she was trying to say, just put this with this and put it together. And my grandmother is kind of like, mm-hmm. And she just took that box grater and she's like, look, it's going to happen the way it's going to happen. Yep. My mom was trying to say, this is faster. You're not going to nick your knuckles, none of that. And it was about the process, and my grandmother was like, you do you, and we're going to go with this process. And to this day, if I'm making coleslaw, I'm just going to use that box grater. I grew up, she was having me grate stuff and grew up doing it that way.
And your son is going to remember that. He's going to remember you. He was like, well, if he sees someone else make it, he's like, well, my mom always used that silver thing, the box.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tradition.
Yeah. And it's funny because it made me think about it when we were talking earlier about the section on gadgets in your pantry. That would be one of my gadgets, which might not be taken out all year round, but when it comes time to do certain things, that's the gadget that I'm going to have. I use
box grater too.
Yeah.
I still have one. I use it, and sometimes I'm like, why am I using this thing? It's just habit. It's how I saw other people cook in my family. I probably could, and I'm all with saving time, but for some things, particularly at celebrations and at Juneteenth and special occasions, you want to it's the ritual of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's how I feel if I'm making a pie crust. I just, like I said, I grew up, my grandmother taught me how to do it, and I can cut that Crisco in or whatever if it's butter or, cut it in with that. That's just the way that I do it. Now, let me ask you this. Do you have a favorite recipe?
Ooh, that's a good one. A favorite. I will say there are chapters that I go to time and time again. I would say the salad chapter is one of the chapters that I feel like you can kind of interchange things at different times of the year. Like you don't have to use plums; you can use apples or pears to make the pesto salad with grains. So there are variations of things that I make throughout the entire year, right? The espresso martini, in the everyday Juneteenth chapter. Those two chapters are the ones that I return to over and over again. Those are things that are in my repertoire. I don't even need the book. I just make it all the time. So
Okay.
I would say I have two favorite chapters for sure. And I'm partial to the sweet potato spritz.
Okay. Okay.
I like that my red drink, even though someone said, well, it's not red. It's not, it's orange, but the capiletti of the aperitivo is very red.
There
It's
you go.
festive though.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I think that in talking about the everyday Juneteenth section, I have to ask you about the pretzel fried chicken. Tell me
Okay.
about, because one of the things when I saw it when you said, in the description where it said I was running out of my breading and of my panko, but I had pretzels. And at first I said, wow, I don't know how that would go. But, I think we've all been there when
It's
it's
amazing.
like, I need something and it's not here. And it just seems like it would go. I love that it's one of those everyday recipes where, you could have, and in fact, one of the things in this book that I really liked is, you could do this for a cookout. You could do this for a dinner party. The recipes and the flavor profiles, you can really try it. It can be, like you said, you can stick more with the salads. There's the boiled salmon there, so, but I like the everyday recipes. And I have to say, before I forget, I'm a big fan of pound cake. I'm a big
Oh,
fan of Moscato. I'm like, ooh, Moscato pound cake. I'm gonna have to try this.
yeah. Moscato is having such a pop culture, black Twitter, black moment. And a lot of people I would say some of the food snobs are like, Moscato is only for dessert. It is a dessert wine, but listen, let people have what they want to. So literally, I took that concept. I'm like, how can I put Moscato in this book? Like in
Yeah.
my first cookbook, I have a pound cake, the book that I wrote to accompany Tracy Morgan's show called The Last OG. There's a pound cake. I love pound cake. I grew up on pound cake, but literally I'm like, okay, I want to do a Moscato pound cake. There you go. So that's
Mhm.
how that came to be. Just using pop culture moments and knowing that what are the staples for Black celebrations and Juneteenth. That's how that came to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's one of my
Okay.
favorites.
Okay.
I see somebody in the comments saying
Yeah.
I'm a potato salad maker at all celebrations. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I love to see it.
Wow. Well, you know what I was going to say? Let me see if we can take a moment. I see there are a few questions here. Let me see. Ooh, here's one. It says, if you had to pick a sample Juneteenth table plate, what would the staples have to be for newbies? So if you were going to do a sample table plate.
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, and when I'm gonna assume newbies means newbies to celebrate the holiday, but they can cook, right?
Okay. Yeah, let's
I
go
would
with
say
that.
you definitely have to have a red drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say one of the simple red drinks to make is hibiscus, doing a hibiscus tea. I like to just make the tea without sugar and like have the sugar on the side because
Okay.
I feel like the true essence of hibiscus tea or sorrel, some people call it, is when you don't add as much sugar. You can really taste all the herbal floral notes. So you definitely need to have that. I would say you gotta have a dessert for Juneteenth.
Mm-hmm.
So something from the cakes or pies chapter or the ice cream chapter is a must. I love the icebox cake. I think it's super easy. You're not making ice cream, you're using whipped topping, you're using chocolate crackers. And I actually just found out that those Nabisco chocolate wafers have discontinued. So people
Oh,
can't buy them anymore, but I have a recipe for homemade ones.
okay.
But I've seen someone do them with Oreos and take out the inside of the Oreos. So
That sounds like a lot of work.
that is a lot of work, but people have done it. And you need something from potato salad for sure. And I would say do the mushrooms. And I'm saying the mushrooms, the barbecue mushrooms. And I'm saying that because if you're inviting people over who are vegan or vegetarian,
Mm-hmm.
they'll fall in love with the what I call do I call them fancy ass mushrooms, or did they take the A word out? Um, but they are literally for people who come over who are vegan or vegetarian.
Yep. Okay. Wow. Let me see. And oh, okay, here's one. It said, would you have any recommendations for good restaurants in the New York or New Jersey area for good Juneteenth food?
Oh,
So,
that's a good question. So I live in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Bed-Stuy neighborhood in Brooklyn. I've lived here since 2008. I went on a pause for 2 years, but so I can say what, 15 years.
okay.
I go to a lot of restaurants. I get inspired by restaurants. But one of the places I love to go in Bed-Stuy is called Peaches Hot House. They have really great fried chicken. It's a Black-owned restaurant. They have four locations, all in Bed-Stuy. They have one in downtown Brooklyn called Peaches. It's kind of like a Houston's, so it's a little fancier. But Peaches for sure is my recommendation. If you are coming to New York and you want something a bit casual, one of my dear friends and colleagues owns Field Trip. He does a lot of rice bowls. He has one in Harlem as well as Rockefeller Center. Rice bowls with different proteins, and all his food speaks to the African diaspora experience, so the Black global experience. All kind of rice, black
Mm,
rice. Yeah, those are my two recommendations.
okay. Okay. Wow. So then tell us the names of those two again. There was Peaches.
Peaches, which
Mhm.
they have four different locations. Some of the concepts are a little bit different. Field Trip,
Field
that's
trip.
owned by Chef James Beard Award-winning Chef J.J. Johnson. I mean, there are a slew of others, but those are the two just kind of pop in my head right,
Okay.
right this
Yeah.
moment. I also love a breakfast spot called Egg. Um, they've been around like 15, almost 20 years. It's not a Black-owned restaurant. They're ally, they're super cool, but it's one of the only places in New York that I can get a solid Southern breakfast with grits, biscuits, country ham, fig jam, sauteed vegetables. Like they'll do like sauteed kale
Mm.
on the side with like a boiled tomato. What you know about that boiled tomato? Like stewed down tomato. So that's one of my favorite spots to get breakfast food.
Wow.
Speaks to
Wow.
the
I was
Southern.
gonna say I haven't eaten dinner yet, so
Same.
you
I'm
know.
hungry now.
Oh my goodness. Um, I got food on my, well, I've had food on my mind the whole time, but now I'm
So what
really
are you
thinking
gonna be
about
making
this.
for Juneteenth? Are you gonna make? Are
Oh
you
my
gonna
goodness.
celebrate?
So you know what? For Juneteenth, I think first and foremost, I love watermelon. In fact, I'm trying to grow some for the first time here. So they're not going to be out of my yard, but I think my favorite recipes, I want to try, I'm going to do some barbecue. So I like to do barbecue. I'm going to go with potato salad. And I like my other grandmother used to do a 3-bean salad that
Oh,
she
I
would
love it.
grow from. Yep.
So
And
is
I
the three
in your
bean
recipe,
salad kind of like the corn salad that I do?
exactly, exactly. So I know what she used to do, but I want to try what the some of the different flavorings from your recipe, but exactly, it's a cold salad, or yeah, it's a cold salad, and um and then go with that. I do want to say that um there are different Juneteenth celebrations around. And one thing I wanted to ask you is similar to the question I asked for what would be a sample plate. If you had any recommendations, if someone wants to have a Juneteenth celebration at home, or invite friends over, however they're going to do it, what do you think the key
Mm,
elements are that
mm.
you would want to make sure, or you would recommend someone incorporate?
I
And
love
it could
that
be their
question.
food, it could
I love
be
that question.
the friendship.
I have one answer to that.
Sure.
And what I tell everyone, it's the grounding of Juneteenth. Like saying out loud, June 19th, 1865 was the day that more than 200,000 enslaved Black Texans found out that they were free. 2 years, more than 2 years
Mhm.
after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When you say that with your full throat and your full body and just think about
Yeah.
the happiness and also the kind of like, what, more than 2 years, and you say that at your Juneteenth event, you ground it. And I think
Mhm.
the most important thing above the food is really grounding the celebration with saying that and understand the magnitude of that happening. And how Black people have still been resilient after that, and we're still thriving and surviving and still fighting for equality. That's the most important thing at the Juneteenth celebration.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that and honoring that in a very reverence and respectful way.
Okay. Okay. And you know what? I think it brings it full circle with what you were talking about with the title of your book, with Redbirds, that as you were saying, it's honoring the past, it's recognize where we are in the present, but always to have your eye on the future and
Always.
where we're going from there. And I love that with the Redbirds as a nod to the past. And, like I said, gather with friends, family, however, but always keep that eye on the future and where we're going from there, because it's a story of resilience. And we need to honor that and carry it forward and make
That,
sure that the next
that is
generation
what this
understands.
that's what watermelon and redbirds is really, really at the core of it. If you strip it down from all the recipes, it really is all about my 4-year-old son, your son, remembering, not only us, but generations before us that made things better for them. That's what's most important, and that all Americans, this is an American holiday. Yes, it is a holiday that is centered around Black culture and Black survival and Black resilience. But ultimately, this is a holiday that all Americans should understand and know what it really means. That's most important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
This has been fun. I think
Yeah.
it's always good to be in conversation with someone who's like read the book in and out and know all the recipes. They don't even have to look at a paper. You are excellent.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was gonna say, I don't know about in and out and upside down, but I love this book. And it like I said, it took me on a journey. It was a food journey. It was a history journey. It made me really reflect on my family and my memories and how they're all tied together. And you can't say that about every book. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all the people who were in on this beautiful evening listening to this talk, and all the people who are going to listen to the recorded thing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
I was just going to also say thank you to both of you. Thank you, Kelly, for interviewing, and Nicole for appearing to talk. And thank you, everyone, for attending from the library.
Yes, and I hope everybody finds their way to mark Juneteenth this year, which is, of course, just in a few weeks. Keep this in mind. Have a wonderful day and try out some of these recipes. Watermelon and Redbirds. It's available, a celebration of Juneteenth and Black Celebrations. So, great.
I will send out a recap with the recording and some of the information that we talked about today. But thank you again, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.